80% of buyers in tech use Gen AI at least as much as search for vendor research.
Okay.
And that is 21 points higher than any other industry.
Right.
There is absolutely no denying this. And I think it does just lead us to the point that we have to pay attention to this channel.
Well, this is yet another thing that marketers have to somehow find the ability to do and do well. There's help in the form of productivity gains, cost reductions, and efficiencies from AI in your go-to-market.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here with you as usual, joined by Phil in the studio. And today, surprise, surprise, what are we talking about? AI, but in particular, how AI is changing B2B buyer research, how it's changing the buying process, evaluation, research of vendors and solutions. And there's some really, really interesting things happening there that we all need to be aware of and understand how we can actually impact that from a marketing perspective. So yeah, we are going to dive into that today and discuss all things AI, buyer research and processes. Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Think about listening to this podcast right now. You're probably multitasking and catching 70, maybe 80% of it. Now flip that and imagine only catching 20%. That'd be pretty crazy, right? Yet most businesses only use 20% of their data. All the important details in call logs, emails, and chats just left floating in digital space. HubSpot gives you access to those insights to help your business grow. Because when you know more, you grow more. Visit HubSpot.com to get the full picture today.
It's experiencing rapid adoption, like no other thing before it, having a dramatic effect on how buyers do their buying, and really does deepen and increase some of the blind spots that marketers have, some of the gaps that exist, and increases the need to be aware of the realities behind the purchases that you ultimately see in your CRM. So a very key topic for marketers today.
Yeah. I joke about talking about AI again, but in particular, the disruption to the buyer journey, the research process, the evaluation process is one that I don't see covered as often, but it's a huge one that's affected every single business.
It's the root of all changes to go to market, ultimately. How buyers use the technology that's available to them drives both those technologies, how they evolve, what features they develop and release, and what works in a marketing sense. Those two things, there's a symbiotic relationship between all of those things. There, to an extent, anything that marketers do at enormous scale, saturating channels, drowning out signal with noise and so on, will drive buyer behavior shifts over a long enough time, done enough. But buyer behavior and adoption of channels and technologies drives marketing behavior, and the cycle goes on and on and on. So we're in a phase where, well, we're driving it. Both sides of the circle are driving it, but the buyer behavior changes, they're critical to understand.
It's a crazy time and just so important that we understand it. And for me, the crazy thing is how much the entire buyer journey, and particular the research and evaluation phases, can now be driven and in an entire chat window with AI. Like, just the fundamental way that your buyers are actually understanding their problem, creating a short list of vendors to actually go out to, like that, the old playbook of how they do that has just been totally ripped up and replaced with a single chat window.
Buyers, or the ones that have adopted AI, which is a significant proportion and many more to come, will no doubt be conversing daily with their AI assistants on all manner of topics, and that will be building, their perception of problems and challenges and solutions over time, but they can also go from, starting and researching a topic or a challenge in an informational context, all the way through to commercial
Yeah.
and shortlist, and in some cases even selecting a vendor
Yeah.
in that one chat experience, or at least within that one tool. No need necessarily at that point in time to go onto other platforms, on other channels, proactively. You're more likely to simply be bringing to it signals that you've heard and seen and felt before into that conversation with the AI.
Yeah. And, whilst that changes things that we should be doing as marketers in order to influence that and be on those lists, I think actually just thinking about the psychology and the behavior of us as humans when it comes to researching now, like, I don't know about you, but I can't think of anything worse than needing, let's say, a project management software and going to Google and siphoning my way through, 20 blogs, 20 product pages, actually understanding myself,
Yeah.
like looking at all the features, the benefits, etc., coming up with a shortlist myself, documenting it somewhere, and having to do all of that research myself, putting all the time into it. But now, like, we've just become not even lazy, but so more productive
Yeah.
with AI.
The experience becomes the expectation. It was true of the internet, and it was true of search and of Google. What buyers experience, regularly once it's available to them, simply becomes the expected experience, and to try to get them to do anything else, and to try to be part of any other process is naive, because the buyer will always, default to what it is they expect as an experience. So, Kieran Flanagan said it a long time ago that AI would disrupt blue links because it's so easy and fast, and humans go where it's easy and fast. Now, there is a scale, in terms of purchases. Some purchases are relatively low risk, relatively low cost, and others are very high risk and can be very high cost. So there is always still the potential for, more due diligence to take place, requirements, definitions, and comparisons. But what I see happening more and more is that's being pushed onto the vendor anyway.
Yeah.
So you might still get to the shortlist stage with your AI companion, before doing that, and then partner with the people that you think seriously that you want to work with to go through that part of the process.
Yeah.
Like you say, you can get a long, long way in a very short amount of time, which isn't laziness, to your point, but it is an extraordinary new experience for us.
Yeah. So there was an interesting report, and I've dug out a few different reports, and I'll try and aggregate the data myself. But this one in particular is interesting, from Demand Gen Report, and they interviewed over 350 B2B buyers in a range of sectors and found that 80% of buyers in tech use Gen AI at least as much as search for vendor research.
Okay.
And that is 21 points higher than any other industry.
Right.
So your point about maybe certain industries requiring complex research processes, complex buying cycles, maybe perhaps just lagging behind in adoption of AI and adoption of this kind of technology makes perfect sense here.
Yep.
But the stats, and there was another one by 6 Sense which showed similar. It was like over 80% of B2B buyers are using AI in their buying journey.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no denying this, and I think it does just lead us to the point that we have to pay attention to this channel. And obviously we've talked about this a number of times on the podcast now, but it is just so important that your brand is present in these responses, because if your buyers are using these channels for research, like go where your buyers are, right? Go where your audience is, and they are clearly, particularly in tech and in faster moving industries, adopting this at extreme rates. You got to be in there.
Yeah, pretty risky strategy to optimize for the 20% of people that aren't doing something, unless with high accuracy that all of your buyers exist in that camp of people.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty rare scenario, I imagine. So 80%, such an interesting threshold, isn't it? We learned in years gone by that 80% of the purchase process was done before
sales, yeah.
before buyers reach out to sales, and that drove people to think and to plan for SEO and social and other channels. And now we see 80% of our buyers are using these tools for some or all of the research process.
Yeah,
it's a must do area.
Yeah, and it brings us back to content strategy, really, because ultimately, whilst your buyers are researching about problems they're having, you need to do your best job to ensure that your product or solution is being mentioned as the answer to that problem.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Marcus Sheridan, right? They ask, you answer, but you're not answering anymore. But you kind of are, because AI is potentially citing your content as the answer to that problem.
Yeah, I was thinking that there's some similarities between AI and word of mouth as a channel in an odd sort of way.
It's a conversation at the end of the day.
It's a conversation with something that's making recommendations based on its ability, based on its conclusions about what you're talking about, which is based on information it can gather. Now, some of that information is gathered in the moment. Some of it is sort of destined, if you like. There's the model to take into account. There's your context to take into account, so on and so forth. But you're getting a response, which is the net result of inputs to the system. Our colleague Raf talks regularly about the mere effect. We'll have to look up the scientists that did that, but how people recommend products, not just products that they've used, but products that they think are good because of exposure to them that hasn't had a negative effect on their perception. So it's like there's some overlaps here in terms of how this all influences pipeline and buyers by requiring your content strategy to get you recommended by AI to the right buyers.
Yeah, and there's entity associations as well, associating your brand and what you want to be known for throughout all of your the whole web, essentially, because AI, I've found, is extremely good at tying you to 1 to 3 core pain points, 1 to 3 core solutions that you actually offer. And if you are repositioning yourself or going into a completely new market, new product, whatever it may be, you've got to work really hard within your own content, but also externally, to change that perception within AI, not just your market.
Of what you are.
That is a big challenge that marketers will be facing if they want to reposition, flip things, whatever it may be. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yeah. It's kind of critical to think about how you're going to get included in the right responses, and important, I think, to know the difference between citations and mentions, and understand the relative value of each, and where to focus and put your effort, and build your AI visibility and your AI positioning.
Having a strategy for AI search is just absolutely crucial. And we've covered pieces on this podcast already, previous episodes, about how to actually go about this. But understanding the content types, the formats that are being presented, mentioned and cited, cited being the important one, as content sources in the prompts that you're synthesizing, that your personas would actually use in the research process. That is so important to understand those content types. And ultimately, we're kind of going back to the Brian Dean skyscraper method almost, where it's let's have a look at the content types that are being cited here, understand what makes them extremely readable, parsable for AI, strip out all the best parts, understand our buyer deeply, better than anybody else, document that research, layer it all together, and produce content that is better for readability and passageability
Mm-hmm.
for AI, better than anybody else
Yeah.
does in your category.
Yeah.
And the content types are likely to share similarities across industries, but it's so important to actually understand what is crucial in your industry and what's being cited as source material in your industry, because I have seen it vary, particularly for
Yeah.
regulated industries, like compliance heavy industries. There are differences in source information and what's required in there compared to SaaS, which is a listicle blog or something. You might not be able to get away with that in other industries.
Yeah, yeah. It's an important reminder for marketers. Don't create what you assume will work, or or what the what the common thinking is on the subject. Like, do your research first and identify what's gonna give you the greatest odds of success.
Yeah.
If you can displace it, outperform it, and produce something that is more attractive to reference and to draw from than what's already there.
Yeah.
Pretty universal concept that in order to get attention, you've got to, if there's competition for it, you've got to displace and outperform what's already there.
Yeah.
And that should be your strategy, with, thanks to AI, a very, very clear focus on your ICP and their real, benefits of solving their problems with you. This is a really nice time where we're able to really lean into who we can serve best and grow there, as opposed to some of the limitations of our, other existing channels not being as targeted in terms of context.
Yeah, that's really true. And obviously ads are coming soon. I am
Right.
Sorry, I'm deviating us here, but I'm just fascinated to see the analytics and data we get.
Well, that would be...
I mean, that could be just what an unlock that could be for AEO in general.
Totally, yeah. I mean, who knows? It's going to be one of the most interesting things we get to see. It could be incredible, but we just don't know what we're going to get.
Yeah,
I don't even speculate, because I've got no clue.
Yeah,
how they might go about it. I can hypothesize that we'll get some sort of topic level insights.
I think it will be intent based, but I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway,
certainly something to look at the minute it becomes available.
But I do, so thinking about data still, having a tool. We use Scrunch, an AEO tool. There's lots of others out there. HubSpot acquired Xfunnel, which I've heard is great. But Scrunch has been really good to aggregate data. It is, if you're serious about AEO, and you should be right now, having a tool similar to how you probably have Ahrefs or SEMrush, or your agency uses that, it is just so important. Because I don't know if you saw Rand Fishkin's video on LinkedIn. He posted a video which was a study about how AI, even with the exact same prompt across his entire team, even when they searched it multiple times again and again and again, it came up with different answers. I don't know the exact stat, but we already know that, right?
Yeah.
If I search for something 10 times, I'm probably going to get 10 different answers. They might say similar things, but they'll be different.
Yeah.
And you will as well.
Yeah.
The point being that just testing things out in your own ChatGPT account is not going to give you the aggregated data view of how you're actually performing in AI search. I think we're tracking like 2,000 prompts or something now in our Scrunch account, which is for us, which is obviously seems excessive, but it's about creating the overall view of how you're performing in a topical landscape. We're not talking about a one-to-one relationship anymore with keywords. We're actually understanding our visibility across entire topics, and it doesn't matter really if we're not going to be cited or mentioned one day, because that is totally expected in a probabilistic model. So it's really important to have a tool.
What you're trying to do there is build a model that has enough confidence directionally to base your decisions on. You can't possibly know and map every permutation and every result
Yeah.
day to day, but you need that kind of scale to have something which gives you, directional confidence in what route to take, even when there's massive variance within the data. Yeah.
If you're listening to this right now, you're probably doing what every other B2B marketer is doing, asking, how do I get my brand cited in ChatGPT? How do I show up in Gemini, Perplexity, Claude? And at Blend, we help you do exactly that. We engineer visibility in AI search for B2B companies. We build the content, implement the technical optimization, and track your performance across every major AI platform. So when buyers are researching solutions like yours, your brand gets recommended. We know how to engineer visibility in AI search because we built a framework and proved it on ourselves first. And this took months of experimentation, but in the end it delivered 470 high value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate across prompts, and 250% more AI sourced leads. We proved the framework and now we're starting to roll it out across customers who are seeing similar results. So if you want to dominate AI search in your category, visit blendb2b.com to learn more about our AI search services. If you're enjoying this show, let me recommend another one from the HubSpot podcast network, Billion Dollar Moves, hosted by Sarah Chen Spellings. Sarah sits down with the leaders actually building category defining businesses and pulls out the strategies and hard lessons that shaped their success. Her recent episode with Taiwan's CEO explores how he's reinventing a 77-year-old family business for modern markets. Whether you're scaling or transforming your own business, there's a lot to learn here. Listen to Billion Dollar Moves wherever you get your podcasts. So the other point I want to move on to is the misleading nature that data and attribution can give us when thinking about AI. Because I've seen it in our own data that we get high intent leads that cite in self-reported attribution that they heard about us in large language models, ChatGPT, whatever it may be, but their original source, their software attribution is not that. It's direct traffic, it's organic search, whatever it may be.
Yep.
I've also seen the flip side of that, where software attribution says they came from an AI referral, but self-reported attribution is Google search or LinkedIn, whatever it may be. So I suppose the point is that whilst it is entirely possible to complete entire buyer journeys within AI, it's extremely unrealistic for that to actually happen. And if you totally rely on software attribution to show you that that's happening inside your industry and your business, you're probably going to be misled.
Yeah, absolutely. So, even if you get a trackable AI referral, that will be the first conversion. That will not tell you anything about their conversation and the route it took and what insights and data and resources were part of that experience, and won't go any further back in the buyer journey either. So won't tell you where they first heard about you necessarily, or what other interactions they've had with your brand, which is common across all attribution. So it does create a new dark spot in the sort of trackable buyer journey and the attribution data you can get that you've got to be aware of.
Yeah, and we know that buyers are using AI search as a way to create their shortlist, and then using traditional search or other methods, may even, post their shortlist in a forum or a community to then get more advice.
Absolutely.
So
it can all possible. I recall from a long time ago, I think it was Neil Patel that said it, which was, there are very few trends in B2B data when you get sort of down close to purchase. The volume so often doesn't reveal a pattern, right? And now that pattern's in the dark anyway. But to your point, buyers are doing anything and everything before they get to you.
Yeah.
And you can't see a lot of it. It's all possible, and you'll get a lot of mixed signals from these buyers as they come into your platforms.
Yeah. And I don't want us to give mixed signals here either, which is, AEO should be a huge part of your strategy in 2026. However, it is not the only thing that buyers will see or use in their buyer journey. Like
Absolutely.
we know that, I saw the stat, it was like 90% of B2B buyers select a vendor that's on their day one shortlist.
Yep.
Anyway,
90% of purchases go to
yes. I
day
can't
one.
remember what the
That's
source of that
Gartner.
was. Is it Gartner?
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you be on that day one shortlist? It might not be AEO. Like that might be a way that they're creating their day one shortlist. It's probably not. Day one shortlist is typically brand memory associations that are built up over a long period of time. And that could be via AI research that was done 3 months ago. Like but it could be that they saw you at an event. It could be they saw your LinkedIn ad. It could be that they spoke to a member of your team 2 years ago down the pub. Like,
Yep.
there are so many different influencers in marketing, and data, I think more than ever, can actually be really misleading.
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking yesterday at the common / popular attribution models.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking how utterly pointless they all are. I mean, it's just nonsense, really, when you look at it. 10% of the deal credit goes to this interaction, 20% spread across these ones, and 40%. I'm like, it's just made up nonsense that has no basis in reality. So, but there's a chasm. I see a chasm. Like attribution data, like channel data, platform data, it's all useful data to marketers to inform their plans and decisions. But when it becomes the goal, when it becomes the deciding factor in the investment strategy, when it becomes, what you optimize for, you're at real risk of moving away from what is really going to drive results. And I see a lot of marketers who frankly are just stuck in the middle. That they want attribution data to be like the source of truth, the reliable judge of success or failure and the way to optimize. So they're collecting it all, but they can't act on it or understand it because they know how inconsistent it is. I also think that when you look at typical B2Bs and how they run, what campaigns in quick succession, like the attribution data from one campaign to the next, it doesn't have a lot of relevance to one another because there's massive differences in the timing, the message, the content, the audience. I'm like, you haven't really got a high level set of data there that you can go, right, this is working, this isn't working. So it's just a messy area that I think is better replaced with this buyer insight mindset, which is, what's the journey they take? What are the channels, platforms, communities, spaces that they are, likely to touch on that journey, and how can you make sure that you show up in ways that reinforce their preference to have you on their shortlist and so on.
Like creating that continuous cycle of buyer intelligence, understanding first how your audience will discover you in the first place, but then how prospects that your sales team are talking to are talking about you, talking about how they found you, talking about their challenges, their problems. And I absolutely love Ask Elephant, and the customer insight section that we set up in Slack is just absolutely incredible. Like after every single discovery call, having a quick snapshot as a marketer of the core pain points, the core buyer entry point, the the pains, the triggers that occurred. It's
gold dust, isn't it?
Absolute gold dust.
Analyzing that over a decent sample size is a much better source of intelligence for how to go to market.
Rather than attribution.
Than original source in HubSpot.
You're so right.
One of a better term. And I mean, obviously, so we were chatting yesterday and we sort of said, is AI a demand capture channel? And, I think there is a significant amount of demand capture going on in there because conversations will be shaped by buyers' pre-existing beliefs about the category. They will be consciously or unconsciously nudging the AI into certain results. Now, there's almost certainly some demand creation going on there as well, because AI will surface brands and solutions to buyers that they've not previously heard of when considering that category. As I think through this, however, which I'm just doing right now, I'd wager that they have a harder job to displace a brand that's already in your mental shortlist, you know, than one that's there. So if AI recommends a new provider to a solution to a problem that you're working on a solution for, it's going to have an uphill climb to get ahead of the brands that you've already put on that shortlist yourself mentally prior to going to your AI chat.
Absolutely.
So you need to be thinking in the round about the buyer journey and operating in the channels that produce the result you're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. Like, if you are on that mental shortlist from day one, you've got a complete advantage, but you're not totally discounted if you're not, right? If you just appear if your AEO strategy is so fantastic that you're appearing in so many prompts that your buyers are using to find you, and then people come to your website, you retarget them across multiple platforms, like you're creating all those touch points, those trust signals, all of those elements, like you have a great chance of at least being like in the final selection process. But yeah, I mean, having a complete strategy for creating demand in the first place and creating mental availability is totally the way to go.
Especially if it's competitive, right? If it is competitive, that becomes even more important. If you have a somewhat unique value proposition, then you've got a different sort of different set of potentials. But the percentages that Gartner shared about how many purchases go to the day one top vendor and how many buyers enter the conversation with the shortlist, and so the percentages tell you what you need to do. Yes, you can get in the running. Yes, you can even win being a late entrant into that process, but statistically it's much less likely. So you want to be there from day one.
Can we talk a minute about I've heard brands, businesses, marketers talk about potentially wanting to hide their content from AI.
Right.
But there are also, dare I say the words gated content and things like that will ultimately hinder your ability to appear in AI search, which is a core part of the buyer journey now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, pretty hard arguments to make for either of those. As far as I know, AI doesn't retrieve PDF documents that are de-indexed.
And
filter the content,
gated,
right?
Yeah.
Same way Google didn't. So gated content as a strategy of influencing buyers who are increasingly using AI for the research process doesn't add up, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So if that's still
I mean, it makes less sense than ever. Like I only say it, right, because I had a conversation last week with a marketer that is still gating content like at insane levels for everything on their website. I honestly just can't believe we're still talking about this.
Well, I too have come across marketers that are doing it, and the fundamental difference probably is their core strategy. Marketers that are trying to build discoverability, visibility, brand awareness, mental awareness, preference, etc., and inbound demand, gated content makes no sense for them. That just doesn't add up. If the model is still an outbound model where you're targeting specific buyers, with outbound emails driving them to content, then you can convince yourself that gated content is still a sound strategy. The conversion rates on that type of marketing into pipeline and revenue should tell you otherwise, but nevertheless, that's where you will find it more prevalent, I imagine.
But if you're doing outbound, you have their email, you have their name, you have their job title.
That's a good point.
Why? Yeah. I mean, I think we can for one last time say, look, if you're gating content, it's a fundamental issue likely in the organization around metrics and mindset of what you're truly trying to drive as a marketing function, and that needs to be realigned with actual success and what's driving pipeline and revenue, because it is extremely unlikely that it's any of those leads from gated content.
And the budget can be better spent elsewhere.
On
the other point, what was the other point? Gated content and
so businesses not wanting to like de-index their site from AI models and training data.
I mean, again, you've got to be mad, right?
Yeah.
You know, with the exception of a few very clear and probably very obvious cases.
Yeah, if they're like regulated bodies, or
Sure.
if there is a obvious exception.
Yeah. But in the whole, I do actually. I mean, it's interesting how these conversations like reoccur. I recall this back when I was getting businesses to think about SEO and blogging back originally. Sometimes the response was, "Oh no, we don't want our competitors to see this or that." I'm like, hide from your competitors, and you hide from your customers too. You've just got to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
You've got to be faster. You've got to be better. You've got to be bolder than your competition, not cowering from them and letting them be discovered by your buyers. So yeah, in the main, hiding content from these bots. I can understand the sort of the reason for an ethical debate around it existing. Can totally understand it. But as a business trying to grow pipeline, no way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So I suppose, like, rounding us back out, the shift is totally undeniable that
defo
your buyers, anybody listening to this, your buyers are using AI search in their research process. Like,
as are you, probably.
Yeah, like definitely as marketers, like, you know, we kind of adopt everything pretty quickly, right? But no matter what industry you're in, at some point it will also take off and catch up. And we just have to ensure that our content strategy, our once SEO strategy, now combines an AEO strategy to be found throughout that entire buyer journey, and make sure that your brand is present in these responses, cited ideally.
Yeah, you've got to do it. You said yesterday, when we were sort of discussing this episode, you said AEO is something you've got to do, more or less. And it's not a replacement for SEO or for social or for advertising necessarily. You just have to do it as well, which creates a budget and resource requirement, and which in most cases creates a challenge, because most marketers are already right up against their budget and resource, bandwidth in that sense. So it's a conundrum that has to be solved. But, the good news is that not only is AI disrupting the way the buyers do research, AI can also change the way that you do work.
Yeah.
AEO content is a very, very tangible thing to do with a high degree of AI assisted production. I think AI will also change the stakes around SEO. And if you separate SEO content from thought leadership content, then I believe that SEO content can also be accelerated, augmented, or cost reduced with AI quite dramatically. So, on the one hand, while this is yet another thing that marketers have to somehow find the ability to do and do well, there's help in the form of productivity gains, cost reductions, and efficiencies from AI in your go-to-market.
Yeah. It's a challenge, right? Because I kind of joked. I kind of joked yesterday that, well, SEO is still really important, and buyers are still using commercial searches, etc., to actually find vendors. So we're in a position right now where you have to do both. You have to do it all, and that can be really hard if you're not evolving with AI developments and actually understanding how you can accelerate what you're doing for the good of, like, your own marketing using AI. For me, the work now in SEO and AEO is primarily all in the foundations and the strategy at the outset. How, particularly in AEO, like how we create the assets, the reusable assets in Claude projects in our case, and like the in-depth instructions, the knowledge packs, the architecture of the content, the formats, like understanding all of that deeply and feeding it into models that are going to create content for us that are 90% there, say. Like, that's where the actual brain power goes. That's where, and I love that, actually, because I think that is the best use of our time as like strategic marketers. It's how do we unpack everything that we have with all the research we have from our buyers, combine all of that together with the way that large language models are showing different content types, like package all of that up, extract it into, you know, a Claude project or whatever model you use. That's fun. Like
Yeah.
that
Oh,
is it's
absolutely.
great use of time, actually.
Yep, yep, absolutely. Very, very rewarding, very fun, valuable to your business,
Yeah.
and actually is the sort of task where, you know, strategic marketers should be putting their time and effort. Yeah, it's really worth thinking about the channels, AEO, SEO, any channel in terms of, you know, the fundamentals of it, the unit economics of it. I think where a lot of businesses did get stuck and went a bit wrong with SEO was trying to force thought leadership type content into SEO type content, which never really worked, right? You couldn't make users of search interested in things that were interesting to you.
Yeah.
You know, if they weren't already interesting to them. And so I think with AEO, with SEO, it's worth really thinking clearly about what are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? What content is required to achieve it? And see, as a result, how you can change the production process. Keep creating thought leadership, don't get me wrong, but don't kid yourself that it's going to have an SEO or AEO benefit necessarily, and use it where it can have an impact, you know, on social, on YouTube, in podcasts, at events, you know, at communities, at roundtables, etc., etc., etc. And that gives you the ability to think, differently about how you produce this stuff and do it much more successfully.
Yeah. I posted, I mean, not on this exact point, but similar to this on LinkedIn last week, which I think we've spoken about before, which is the disconnect between your brand and what's happening in search right now. Because whilst zero-click searches have been around for a while, right, when like featured snippets were introduced and things like that,
Yep.
there is an amazing study which combines SparkToro data, SimilarWeb data, SEMrush data, loads of stuff to come up with a global zero-click rate.
Wow.
Which is documented all the way from 2020 down to 2025. And the 2025 global zero-click rate is between 80 and 85%. Again, why are we always on 80%? Not sure. But from 2020, that was 64.8%. So if you think about buyers using search and potentially having a problem, going to search and asking about it, well, most of that information now is just presented to them in a context window.
Yeah.
And your brand, any resonance of your brand, the logo, the colors, like the unique thought leadership, as you mentioned, is stripped away from that. Like there is no connection between the two. But there are plenty of other channels where you can really make that connection work and build up that trust, like you just mentioned them there. And yeah, they are two clear distinctions that I think I would definitely make now.
Yeah, I think, you know, like you say, SEO is still like relevant and there, but I think it's the time to think about it in a very technical sense. You know, and do what's justified by the technical landscape. You know, there's a big difference between a business that really hasn't, you know, created a footprint in terms of SEO content versus a business that has been doing it for years, right? You've got to look at your situation and decide what, you know, what's justified by it. But crucially, all so that you can build your AEO strategy and start to create the results that you need there as well.
Which, by the way, will also have a positive impact on Google search.
Yeah, they're not isolated. They do overlap and are connected, aren't they? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really interesting stuff. And very exciting. Like I said, really rewarding time for marketers when they make headway, you know, get early signs of results, figure something out. So it's a good time to be a marketer.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm currently putting together a case study for our own proof of concept for our AEO efforts, which hopefully will, you know, help people understand the process we went through and the results we got out the back of it. So publish that shortly. And yeah, hopefully that'll be useful. Any closing thoughts?
Don't sleep on it. And, you know, if you want to deliver it quickly, you know, at scale, come and talk to us.
Yeah. I like that. We never do that, do we?
Plug.
We never plug ourselves.
I certainly don't. Thought I'd give you a treat. But yeah, like seriously, right? It's something we can help with. So like that's a conversation we can have.
Yeah, we do feel very confident about this, and we have the data. So
yeah.
Cool. All right. Let's leave it there. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of Demand Decoded, and we will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.
Before you go, if all you can think about right now is AI search and how buyers are using it to find products in your category, we should talk. At Blend, we've built a proven framework for answer engine optimization. We tested it on ourselves first and saw 470 high-value prompt appearances, 80% citation rate, and a whopping 250% increase in AI source leads. That's real high intent leads who are finding us through AI search. We've since rolled it out to dozens of clients who are now seeing similar results. Our AI service engineers your visibility in ChatGPT, Perplexity, AI mode, Gemini through structured content, schema markup, and continuous optimization, and measurement through our partner Scrunch. If you want to show up when your buyers are asking AI tools for recommendations in your category, find out more about our AEO services at blendb2b.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.